like the south or the east rift zone, some Hualalai.
It's a long way
yeah,
from
yeah.
Puna, yeah. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're ThinkTech Talks. This is Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We're talking about big PV and how it's coming to Hawaii and a kind of sea change these days with Marco Manglesdorf of Provision Solar and Hilo, but he's in San Francisco, joins us by Skype phone. And Alan Yonan, our star advertiser reporter here, who covers energy among other business issues. And we want to move on to the other big story that Alan wrote about recently, and that is what's going on in the Parker Ranch, because they have a plan, and they want to do some big, ambitious energy projects. So what's it like?
Well, they hired a team of international consultants to sort of assess the potential for renewable energy. I guess when they started out, everything was on the table. But as they've sort of done some work on this, en route to producing what they call an integrated resource plan, which is a comprehensive look at all of where their energy generation can come from going forward.
Not to be confused with the state's integrated resource plan, which is statewide.
HECO's integrated resource plan.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so HECO is doing one for its areas that it covers.
Okay, and this is Parker Ranch just for it.
Right. So, I talked with the CEO there, and he said they wanted to. The basic goal is to see if they can bring down electricity rates, starting with the ranch, which is, a sizable operation, seeing if they can bring down rates for the surrounding communities of Waimea and North Kohala. And then if they want to take this thing out even further, if there is enough wind energy, wind is what they're looking at mostly, whether they could also, sell some of that to Helco, the utility there, to,
help Helco,
Yeah.
But you talked about the outlying districts. I mean, my recollection is that Wheeler is not yet the law of Hawaii.
Wheeling.
Wheeling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. That's.
So I mean, that means that if I generate on Parker Ranch some, any kind of energy, and I would like to help my neighboring Kamawela or something, I can't do that.
Over Helco's lines.
Right.
You'd be essentially renting their
right.
conduit to get your electricity from point A to point B, but you're right, that's not permissible. So that's another.
So nice thought, but no soap under the existing law.
Well, they talk about one of the options would be to form a microgrid, which would be isolated from Helco. So they wouldn't need to use Helco's infrastructure. But that would be a lot more expensive, because then they would have to build a lot of this. So I think.
I see. This is all a revelation. So if they, that is Parker Ranch, built a microgrid with, say, Kamawela or some of the other towns in that area, then they wouldn't be stopped by Wheeling.
No.
They could actually sell power across their own boundary to some other user and act like a utility. Wouldn't they have to get utility, authority to do that? Wouldn't they have to apply to the PUC, become a utility to do that? Right.
So they've already formed a company called Paniolo. Help me out here, Marco. What's that company called? Paniolo. They have a subsidiary, a Parker Ranch subsidiary that is an energy company, and presumably, if they ever got to the point where they would have to file to become a utility, which I think is called a certificate of public convenience.
Yes, that sounds right. Yes.
That would be the company the entity that would do that. But in the little that I could, or the few pages here that they've sort of summarized this integrated resource plan, they make it sound like that option would probably be more expensive, because it would involve a lot of infrastructure improvements that they would have to make. Whereas if they stayed on the Helco grid, even with that Wheeling issue, a lot of it's already in place.
Yeah. So yes, and at the end, that's going to dictate what they do, don't you think? I mean, the economics of it.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk about servicing Kamawela, but if it's going to cost too much, they would be ill-advised to actually do it. But forming a microgrid, that hasn't happened yet, right? This is a new idea here in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, yeah, they've done it in other places.
Yeah, that But just hesitating on that one point, if that were possible, if they could do an economic experience, so it wouldn't be too much of a loss, and build the grid, lay the cables, all that stuff, get designated by the PUC as a utility, that would change everything, wouldn't it? That would be a new world.
But then it's easy to, throw rocks from the outside, but when you become the utility, you become the bad guy.
Then they
And
throw rocks at you.
If you're not delivering cheap electricity,
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, let me add to that if I could, which is that it's very hard to find examples in today's world where there are companies and investors who are getting in the power generation and power transmission business. In other words, establishing new utilities. I mean, it is these days not a very or super profitable business enterprise to dive into. So this would be a substantial undertaking from a company that, I mean, I don't have the financials in front of me for Parker, but Parker over the past years has been anything but all that financially strong in terms of making a substantial profit. So I wonder to what extent that this type of proposal is more of a headline grabber along the lines of that HUI that's announced with great fanfare a number of years ago that, by golly, they were going to take HEI private.
Right.
And
whatever happened to them? Never mind.
Yeah.
That was the Ted
Peck.
Ted Peck. Yeah,
And
that went away.
Richard Ha.
Richard Ha. Oh,
Yeah, another big island.
They don't want to talk about it now. Yeah.
Right.
But so
ideas like this get headlines, and I commend Alan for his good piece on it.
Yeah.
But the reality of turning it into reality from both a technical and regulatory perspective, in terms of the challenges, are far, far, far from minimal. So it really will remain to be seen just how much of a practical possibility moving in this direction is.
Sexy still, though. It is sexy.
Well, you could also look at it this way. You have, for instance, from what I can tell, the bulk of the power generation would come from wind. Now, we do have big wind. We've got on Oahu, we've got I think the first one's Kauailoa project is about 70 megawatts. Kahuku is, I think, 30 megawatts. The problem there is that the amount of electricity they produce is not really, and it's produced at a lower cost than oil. But if you put that into the entire HECO generation equation, if you if you can reduce your cost in an area like that, and you spread it out across the whole island, because that whatever savings they get from all of these solar projects and
so it averages out.
It averages out where I don't know if somehow Parker Ranch could island that area, have that wind energy go primarily to the benefit of the people in that area and not have it go to the whole island. Because, I mean, large-scale wind is already a reality. Large-scale solar is going to be a reality. But, on Oahu where, what is peak load here, about 1,200 megawatts?
Yeah.
Something like that. And you got a 70 megawatt wind farm, it's not really making much of a dent. And even when we get to that solar at 240 plus megawatts, out of the total load on the island, it gets diluted. But if somehow, I don't know, if Parker Ranch were able to capture that and have the benefit of that just go to that area versus.
Well, let's talk about that. Hypothetically, suppose Parker Ranch met with Helco and said, look, we'd like to help Kamawela and whatever, I forget the name of the town on the coast there. The town as you go down to the coast.
Down back into Hilo?
Yeah.
We need a Hilo, Big Island geographer.
Yeah, well, Marco, what's the name of that town?
Are you talking the communities that are
Along the
down
the end of the Hamakua coast before the road turns up to Kamawela.
There's Honoka'a.
Honoka'a, that's what I'm thinking. Anyway, suppose, Parker Ranch, we'd like to service these towns. We really care about these towns. So we're approaching Helco and we're saying, look, we would like to make a microgrid here. We don't have the resources. I mean, it's not economic for us. But can't we get into a deal with you? Can't we say that we want you to wire this thing up so that our generation of clean energy will go to those two towns and somehow have the benefit, as if it were a microgrid that we created. We're going to use your wires, and we're going to have a deal. We're going to make an agreement, and that'll be our way of realizing our dream.
Right.
With your agreement.
But I don't think.
Is there anything in that? I mean, could that happen?
I've been going to a lot of these community meetings where they're talking about the utility scale solar, and I've been to Waianae, I've been to Nanakuli, I've been to Mililani, and at every one of those meetings, somebody has asked, why can't we get the benefit? Why does the benefit of this low-cost solar have to be spread out across all of Hiko territory? And there's precedent for that. I think when they were talking about putting wind turbines out along the ridge above the Kahe power plant.
Oh, sure. I remember that very well, yeah.
And Mufi Hanneman pulled the plug on that.
Yes.
They tested that because I don't know if it was Hiko or who their development partner was, said, can't we just have this electricity go to the Waianae coast at cost, and then everybody will be for it? And I think the PUC even said, no, you can't do that. That's not allowable. So for Parker Ranch to, essentially stay connected to Helco and then sell their power at a discount to selected communities, not an option, I don't think.
No, I hearing it that way, Alan, I can't imagine that the guy in Hawaii Kai is ever going to agree, or the guy in Kona.
Hey, we're paying for the rail.
Right, we're paying for. We're all in this together. How can you do this? You make a discount just for some people, not for us, and you're using statewide or county-wide resources. So that's not acceptable. And I can imagine they'll win in court on that real quick, or in the PUC. So that means that microgrids. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Microgrids have to be by brand new utility companies who put the money in to actually build a microgrid without help from the existing utility.
Well, that's kind of the model for that, and it's either UC San Diego or San Diego State. I believe it's UC San Diego has a microgrid, and the person in charge of it is the guy that Larry Ellison hired to come up with an energy plan for Lanai, Washburn. So I've been told, I've read about this UC San Diego microgrid, that it still, they've got a mix of different renewable energies backed up by diesel generators for when they need it. I think they're still connected to Southern California Edison or whoever the utility is there, but they hold that up as an example of basically taking a limited area, bringing their energy costs down because they can micromanage it better than the utility can for a much broader area.
Hard to say what the future will bring, except this. I feel certain that the future will bring a break. That's Alan Yonan, Star Advertiser reporter, Marco Manglesdorf, who joins us from San Francisco Bay Area. This is ThinkTech Talks. We're talking about energy, the state of energy in Hawaii, and specifically the condition of big PV and how it's coming to Hawaii. We'll be right back after this short break. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech Hawaii, broadcasting live from the Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. We raise public awareness about tech, energy, and globalism in Hawaii. Technology is critical to our state. A vibrant tech sector will give us new prospects in the global marketplace and will offer great careers and make our economy more resilient. Streaming live on Ustream and Spreaker, ThinkTech allows its hosts and guests invaluable opportunities to report important events and discuss important questions, and to be heard here in Hawaii and around the world. You can find links to our live streams on thinktechhawaii.com or on our mobile website, m.thinktechhawaii.com. And you can see our archive on YouTube. It's all just a click away. We want to do whatever we can to keep Hawaii relevant, connected, and thriving in the complexity of the 21st century. We hope you will help us in those efforts. Tune in today. This is ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. Mahalo. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Marco Manglesdorf from San Francisco. He joins us from San Francisco by Skype phone, and Alan Yonan in the studio here in downtown Pioneer Plaza, Star reporter for Star Advertiser. And we've been talking about the possibility of a microgrid, but I think we kind of gave that up for Hawaii. I don't know, why would you have a microgrid within an island? An island is a good definition of a microgrid anyway.
We are. Although some of the military bases have explored
that's
that
another
idea.
story. Yeah. The military bases. So why does the military base want to do this? For national defense?
Well, remember when we had an island-wide power outage for how many days was that? We had a lightning strike out in Waiau, and then we had the Big Island earthquake. And if you're providing essential defense services,
You can make a good argument.
yeah, you'd want to. In fact, HECO has just basically signed an agreement with the Army to build a 50 megawatt diesel generating station at Schofield Barracks.
Did you say diesel?
It can run. They're trying to keep it sort of progressive by saying it can run on biodiesel, and so it can run on biodiesel, but they're configuring it in such a way that if there were to be an island-wide outage, that it could be island off the Schofield and Wheeler military bases, so that generator would just provide power to the base, and when that's not needed, it would be feeding electricity into the HECO grid. So
Interesting.
so why not make that your model for Parker Ranch?
Sure. Well, but see, it sounds like people want that. They want to be away from all this tumult going on and all this, noise and controversy and protest and what have you about various elements of clean energy.
Right.
And they can have what they want if they can just isolate themselves. It's the same mentality as putting PV on your roof and cutting your tie with the utility. I'll take care of myself, thank you very much. So where are we going on this? I mean, it certainly seems to me we're involved in a sea change here, and people paying attention to large PV installations and be willing to spend the money. I think it was ramping up to that. Do you remember, I think I saw you there at the one in Kapolei, which is fairly modest, where they put in, I think it was 1 or 2.
It was 1 megawatt.
1 megawatt. Seems small now.
That was Hoku Solar.
Hoku. Oh yes, the former. God bless Hoku, wherever they are. But they, that had promise at the time. My reaction was, oh, good.
Yeah.
They used the toxic soil area.
Right.
They made the desert bloom, so to speak, with PV. And I thought this was going to happen all over the state, but it didn't really happen all over the state.
Didn't that seem like a lot of solar panels, Mark or Jay? I mean, it was as far as I could see, but that's only 1 megawatt. There's now out in West Oahu a 5 megawatt project that's functioning, and then when they get done with this 240 megawatts, I did a back of the envelope calculation that it's basically 5 megawatts per acre. You need an acre of land to produce 5 megawatts, or is it 5 acres of land to produce 1 megawatt? But anyway, it's a lot of land. They want to do it on agriculture land. First Wind Solar is promoting a bill or lobbying for a bill in the legislature that would allow greater use of higher rated ag land for solar. Right now there's limits on how many solar panels you can put on highly good quality ag land.
Well, doesn't this undermine the initiative to do diversified agriculture, to start taking large acreage and applying it toward it seems to me that a wind farm takes less land, or let me put this, less land that is removed from the agricultural inventory. In other words, you could do a wind farm in the middle of a farm.
Yeah.
And
your cattle grazing,
a ranch or anything, right? and get the same or better benefits. And it even works at night. Marco, what's your reaction to this?
I feel that there is and has been a sense of urgency on the part of the utilities and the part of the people writ large, the legislature and the governor, to bring more renewable energy online in a faster fashion. If I remember correctly, now gone Senior Vice President Robbie Alm at HECO lamented that if you looked at the pipeline of available projects in the near term, it was fairly slim in terms of total megawatts. So it doesn't surprise me that there's more of a push for larger and larger scale. And just to give you an idea of scale, back in around 2009, a 25 megawatt PV farm was one of the biggest in the country, and that was in Florida, that one of the utilities in Florida did. And now, as of 2012, 2013, 2014, there are PV farms going in places, Southern California, that are in the 500 plus megawatt range, which when you start getting to that scale, getting into a gigawatt or 1,000 megawatts, you're getting into nuclear power plant scales, which can be anywhere, the nukes can be from 1 to as many as 4 gigawatts. So the scale has gone up dramatically. So for there to be discussions about a 50 megawatt PV farm on Oahu is really taking it to a scale that we haven't seen before, because if I'm not mistaken, the biggest one that is either in development or actually under construction, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, I believe it's the 17 some odd megawatts on the island of Kauai. That KUC is doing, right?
Yeah.
So there's clearly a preference or desire on the part of utility companies to go for concentrated solar, not concentrated in terms of using mirrors and heliostats, but concentrating the generating capacity in one larger area rather than having it be spread across people's rooftops from community to community. So that is, as I've opined before, somewhat disconcerting to me. I see myself perhaps as more of a purist in terms of solar as one of the more democratic, if not the most democratic energy form on the planet, and it makes me feel better personally, philosophically, that there would be 5,000 homes that would have small PV systems rather than 5, 15, or 50 megawatt PV farms. But that said, it brings up a really interesting question, which is, do these 5 megawatts here, 15 megawatts there, 50 megawatts over that away, does that effectively take away the opportunity for thousands of homeowners and small business owners from going PV?
Why would it take? Can't they coexist?
Well, they can coexist as long as the means are found to be able to accommodate ever-increasing penetration into the utility grid writ large and into individual circuits. And that is the conundrum that we collectively keep on going back to, as far as where are those more or less definitive red lines as far as cannot go beyond. And there is not a definitive answer to that question of where is the red line. The utility companies have been, I think, very aggressive in trying to push the boundaries, push the limits of how much more distributed generation and large-scale PV can be taken. But it's a subject that you come back to frequently too, Jay, which is the whole storage idea. And the storage is really critical, whether it's going to take place on the customer side of the meter on a small scale or on the utility side of the meter, which is going to be much larger in the 5, 10, 15 or more megawatt range. So
well, that certainly leads, the whole thing leads to this question of the big ones getting curtailed, and who gets curtailed first, the big ones or the little ones, and where does that what do you call it, the where is the problem here if everybody is generating all this power and the utility grid can't handle it.
Right.
I mean,
well, to take what Marco said, the next step, I mean, at some point, well, right now, most of these utility scale projects are going to be hooking into, the 46 kilovolt line. So they're not going to be at the neighborhood circuit level. They're going to be feeding right into the transmission lines and not the distribution lines.
so they won't be curtailed so quick.
Well, HECO won't say that flat out. Well, the developers like to tell the people at these community meetings that this will have no impact on our utility scale project will have no impact on your ability to put PV on your roof. But the truth of the matter is, at some point on an aggregate basis, even though these are being hooked into the 46 kV lines, the total amount of PV being generated is going to bump into limits, whether you're on the transmission or the distribution side. So, I'm sure the folks deep down in the bowels of HECO are trying to figure out that right now.
Really, in building all these huge facilities and not having storage, we were dealing with the same problem we were dealing with before. What happens now if this all gets built out and we still don't have storage? And how do you have the backup? What do you do when?
Yeah, I mean, HECO's they're working on battery. I know at least, well, the developers who are putting in some of these projects, some of them have been asked to meet the specs of HECO specs that they will have to do storage. I think the Sun Edison project is assuming they're going to have to put in some kind of storage, but it's more not long-term storage.
It's not overnight or anything.
No, this is basically to manage fluctuations.
Fluctuations, yeah. So this doesn't solve the problem. What does it achieve, though? What's the short-term gain or loss of adding all this, utility size PV onto the system?
The short-term gain is, of course, and long-term is that for every kilowatt hour generated from a renewable source, that's one less drop or bucket or barrel of oil that has to be brought in from thousands of miles away, and that's a good thing. Right?
Well, true, but what happens at night? You still have to have the same system operating at night to generate nighttime electricity.
That is true, but
to keep those power plants there and going.
Demand goes. If you look at a typical 24-hour generating graph, the demand for power goes down significantly. So you can get by with having generators idled or ramped down so that you're not burning a bunch of fuel, providing more power than people are not using, essentially. But I wanted to kind of bring this to a more homeowner micro level. We know that, 4 to 5 weeks ago that HECO announced that they were going to be increasing the penetration level on circuits across the HECO, Helco, and MECO companies from essentially 100% of daytime minimum load max to 120%. So, which is not trivial, and that got quite a bit of press in various publications, and it's only relatively recently, as in last week and this week, that letters have been going out, mailed by the utility company to those particular customers, homeowners, small business owners, for systems 10 kilowatts and less in capacity, that the letters have been going out and telling the utility customer what their options are. So I haven't been able to get one in my hot little hands yet, but I was told that the letters are in fact going out. So in a practical way, the stuff that I write about and that Alan writes about and that you speak about, Jay, and a bunch of other people comment on, I mean, that's all somewhat highbrow compared to what does this mean? What does all this stuff mean for a homeowner who's been waiting for 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, or as long as a year, or a year longer than a year, as I have some of my customers in the Big Island who have been in these highly saturated circuits and have been waiting sometimes patiently and sometimes not so patiently to see whether the utility company is able to come up with a solution for them. So that's, to me, in a very tangible sense, what is going on the ground for these homeowners to be able to move forward, or are they going to be stuck waiting for another who knows how long.
Yeah,
So,
and if they look down the road and see a utility-scale PV farm, which is online and they can't get permission,
Yeah.
they're going to be really ticked off. You can explain about how that circuit's different from the other circuit, but they're going to be ticked off.
Tough PR sell.
Yeah, really. Okay, where's it going to go? I mean, to me, I'll put it this way. If you were king, what would you do now? We're obviously in another transition. We're obviously, changes all around us. Sometimes you don't realize it, but things are changing big time. This is, to me, a big change that this is happening. So if you were king and you wanted to manage this thing going forward, what are the moves now?
Well, that's a tough one, Jay. I mean, you'd want to be able to accommodate as much as you can, as Marco pointed out, that, I mean, the solar energy is free. It's the infrastructure that, and the ability to absorb it is where the problem comes in. So if you could, it seems like we talk about storage a lot. It seems like if and it's expensive. Battery storage is expensive. Parker Ranch, they're talking about using pumped hydro,
They have the land.
using the wind to pump the water uphill and basically running a turbine with the water being released on the down
Be the
slope
first
side.
time in the state. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be the first one. But I mean, it's just that whole dilemma of not being able to use all the electricity you're generating from renewable sources, being able to put it somewhere. I mean, the sort of the pie in the sky thing that I've heard some more of the academic side talk about is hydrogen. If you could, because you can make hydrogen out of water using solar energy at a cost, and that becomes a liquid fuel. You could put that in a car, you could put that in a power plant, you could use that anywhere. I mean,
Move it from island to island.
yeah, I mean, it's completely, and that would solve the other issue. Folks like the Blue Planet Foundation don't really like the fact that, for instance, they were going to make biofuel and burn it in a power plant. Well, you should use that liquid fuel for transportation, So if somehow they could get to, I mean, hydrogen is that pie in the sky cover of Science Digest magazine, but I mean, if that would solve a lot of the problems.
It's funny, Alan. I mean, read your stories and get the stuff from Marco that Marco sends around, and it all seems to pop up all the time. All these pop-up things happening, and you don't, it's almost impossible to actually predict what's next on the continuum. Marco, I interrupted you, but what do you think is next on the continuum?
I can't resist chiming in on the hydrogen question because it's something that has received a lot of hype and a lot of, I'll say, delusional hype over the past several years. And I'll give you a quick case study. Former governor of the state of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was very big on hydrogen. He had a dream that he would lead the nation, that California would lead the nation in establishing a hydrogen economy, at least hydrogen as far as a viable, practical, ready-to-go, readily available fuel source for transportation. That was really big for Schwarzenegger. And I asked the two of you, how many hydrogen fueling stations do you believe are actually in existence in California right now?
I think by the way you present the question, we know the answer.
A handful.
9.
Okay.
So you're going to let that dissuade you? I mean,
but it could be more. If somebody actually incentivized, they'd take those tax credit incentives, and put them on incentivizing hydrogen stations. We'd have a lot of hydrogen stations.
Well, they had enough.
Well,
go ahead, Marco.
Just one more quick stat because I'm going to be presenting my lecture on California energy topics just this week. In fact, I've been doing a lot of prep. There are a total of 39 million vehicles registered in the state of Hawaii. That includes buses and cars and trucks and motorcycles, anything that's going to use the public highway.
You mean in California? Yeah.
California, yes, California. 39 million. And out of those 39 million, there are approximately 44,000 which are considered alternative, not hybrids because they still burn fuel, petroleum, but 100% EVs, electric vehicles, or using compressed or liquefied natural gas, or using hydrogen. 44,000. If you do the math, that comes out to about 0.1% of all the vehicles on the road in California are alternative fuels. So it's a really, really tough nut to crack when it comes to transportation. Electricity, we're making a lot of progress. Transportation is still very grim.
Well, that goes back to the question I was trying to insinuate before, and that is we can't have all these surprises where there's no actual plan. And, you know, even if the government is wrong sometimes, you almost wish they would fix on a plan and let's go there. And in the plan, there would be, I guarantee there'd be storage in the plan. And there would be hydrogen probably too. Alan, close.
It's an exciting time to be following energy. I mean, we're on the cutting edge here in Hawaii, and it's people come here to see how we do things. It's, you know, nice to be known for something more than just our beautiful beaches and our great weather. So, you know, if some of these problems are going to be solved, this might be the place where they're going to be solved.
Yes, amen. And Marco, did you have one last remark you want to make?
Oh, I couldn't possibly do any better than Alan. I think he did a fantastic job with his summation.
You guys are great together. Thank you for coming on the show. That's Marco Manglesdorf, teaching in the San Francisco area for a little while. He'll come back soon. And Alan Yonan, a star reporter at the Star Advertiser, covers energy and other things. And we love to have these guys on our show. This is Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We've been talking about how big PV is coming to Hawaii here on ThinkTech. And we'll see you tomorrow with more ThinkTech. Aloha.